Look at a world map, and you might miss it. A narrow strip of water between Iran and Oman. Small on the map, massive in the global economy. Every day, millions of barrels of oil and petroleum products move through this passage. That energy helps fuel cars, ships, factories, airlines, supply chains, and entire economies. Most people never think about it when they fill their car, pay for transport, buy food, or hear news about the Middle East. But if this waterway becomes unstable, the pressure will not remain confined to the Persian Gulf. It can move into markets, governments, shipping costs, fuel prices, and households around the world. This is the Strait of Hormuz, the passage that shows how geography can control global oil. The real question is not only why oil passes through it. The real question is why every major power watches it so closely, why Iran has leverage there, why Gulf states depend on it, why America monitors it, and why the world has so few easy alternatives. The world changes when you understand the systems that shape it. Welcome to Systems Explained. In the next 20 minutes, you will understand the Strait of Hormuz from zero. Where is it? Why does oil flow through it? Why Iran matters there? Why America watches it? Why Gulf states depend on it? And why one narrow passage can affect the global economy. This is not about taking sides. Not pro-Iran, not anti-Iran. Not pro-America, not anti-America. Just geography, energy, trade, and power. To understand the Strait of Hormuz, start with the map. The strait sits between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. From there, ships can move into the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, and global shipping routes. A strait is a narrow body of water connecting two larger bodies of water. That sounds simple, but in global power, narrow spaces can become extremely important. Because when ships, oil, gas, and trade must pass through one narrow route, that route becomes a pressure point. That is what we call a choke point. A choke point is a narrow passage where movement can be slowed, delayed, threatened, or controlled more easily than in open space. Think of a crowded stadium with one main exit. As long as the exit is open, movement continues. But if that exit becomes uncertain, everyone feels the pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most important exits. It is the exit door for much of the oil and gas produced around the Persian Gulf. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Iran itself. These countries sit around one of the most energy-rich regions on Earth. But oil and gas are not useful to the global economy if they stay underground or trapped at the port. They must move. They must be loaded. They must be shipped. They must reach buyers. And for many Gulf exports, the route begins with the Strait of Hormuz. That is why this small piece of geography matters more than its size suggests. On a map, it looks narrow. In the global economy, it is enormous. But the map is only the first layer. The real power of the strait comes from what passes through it. The Strait of Hormuz matters because of the cargo it carries. Oil tankers move from Gulf ports through the strait and then toward Asia, Europe, and other global markets. This is not just a regional route, it is part of the world's energy system. The countries around the Persian Gulf produce far more energy than they consume at home, so they export it. They send it to refineries, industries, transport networks, and buyers worldwide. China, India, Japan, South Korea, Europe, and many other markets. A beginner might think, if my country does not buy most of its oil directly from the Gulf, why should I care? The answer is simple. Oil is priced globally. That means a problem on one major route can affect prices far from where it begins. If buyers in one region lose confidence in Gulf supply, they look for oil somewhere else. That increases competition. Competition affects prices. Prices affect transport. Transport affects goods. Goods affect ordinary people. That is the key. Oil is not just a product, it is a system. It moves through wells, pipelines, ports, tankers, insurance contracts, shipping lanes, refineries, markets, and prices. The Strait of Hormuz sits inside that system like a narrow gate. When the gate is stable, oil moves. When the gate becomes tense, risk increases. When risk increases, costs can increase. Shipping can become more expensive. Insurance can become more expensive. Traders can become nervous. Governments can start preparing. And markets can react before anything physical changes. That is why the strait is powerful. Not because it owns the oil, not because it produces all the oil, but because so much energy must pass near it. The strait is not the engine, it is the doorway. And doorways matter when everyone needs to pass through them. But oil is only the first layer. The deeper question is this: why does this doorway give Iran so much attention? Iran sits on the northern side of the Strait of Hormuz. That simple geographic fact gives Iran strategic importance. Iran does not need to control the whole ocean to matter. It sits beside one of the world's most sensitive energy doorways. In global politics, geography becomes power when other countries depend on the route beside you. This is why Iran's position is so important. The country has a long coastline along the Persian Gulf and near the strait. It watches the passage as part of its security environment. It sees the strait not only as a waterway, but as leverage. Leverage means the ability to influence other people's decisions. Iran's leverage does not mean total control. It does not mean Iran can decide everything that happens in the Persian Gulf. But it does mean that tension involving Iran can quickly become tension involving global shipping, oil prices, and military attention. That is the power of location. A country can be sanctioned, it can be economically pressured, it can be diplomatically isolated. But if it sits beside a route the world needs, it cannot be ignored. This is one reason Iran matters far beyond its borders. The strait gives Iran visibility. It puts pressure on Iran. It gives Iran a way to remind the world that regional conflict can have global consequences. This does not mean Iran wants permanent instability in the strait. Iran also exports energy. Iran also needs trade. Iran also suffers when the region becomes too unstable. But the existence of risk gives Iran strategic weight. If tensions rise around the strait, the shipping risk may increase. Insurance costs can rise. Military attention can grow. Markets can react. That is how local geography becomes global pressure. The strait makes Iran difficult to ignore. And that is exactly why other powers watch it so closely. America watches the Strait of Hormuz because the strait connects energy, allies, trade, and military credibility. The United States cares about the strait not only because of oil for itself. It cares because global energy stability affects the world economy. It cares because many U.S. partners depend on Gulf security. It cares because shipping routes are part of global trade. And it cares because one regional power should not be able to pressure a route that many countries depend on. This is where the phrase freedom of navigation becomes important. Freedom of navigation means ships can move through international waterways without being blocked, threatened, or controlled by one state. In simple terms, the sea route must stay open. Commercial ships must be able to move. Energy must be able to flow. No single country should be able to turn a global route into a private pressure tool. That is the American view. This is why the U.S. maintains military attention in the Gulf, not because the strait is large, but because it is narrow. Not because instability is guaranteed, but because instability there could quickly spread to global markets. For America, protecting the strait also sends a message to allies. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, and other partners are watching the region. The message is simple. The energy routes will not be abandoned. The sea lanes will not be ignored. The Persian Gulf remains part of a wider security system. But America is not the only actor that cares. The Gulf states care even more directly. Because for many of them, the strait is not just a route, it is the exit door to the world. For many Gulf producers, the Strait of Hormuz is not optional. It is the path from energy production to global buyers. Look at the countries around the Persian Gulf. Saudi Arabia exports huge amounts of oil. The United Arab Emirates is a major energy and logistics player. Qatar is one of the world's major gas exporters. Kuwait depends heavily on energy exports. Iraq uses Gulf routes for major exports. Bahrain and others are tied into the same regional energy system. These countries are different. They do not all have the same geography. They do not all have the same export routes. Some have pipeline alternatives. Some have ports outside the strait. Some have more flexibility than others. But the important point is this: the alternatives are limited compared to the scale of what moves through Hormuz. You cannot replace a major global shipping route overnight. You cannot instantly build new ports, pipelines, fleets, contracts, storage systems, and buyer networks. Energy systems are physical. They are not just numbers on a screen. They require steel, ships, terminals, insurance, workers, pipelines, refineries, ports, contracts, security, time. That is why the strait becomes a national security issue for Gulf producers. If your exports depend on one narrow passage, that passage becomes part of your survival system. It affects your budget, your currency, your government planning, your relations with allies, your military strategy, your diplomacy, your future. For Qatar, the strait matters not only because of oil, but also because of liquefied natural gas. Liquefied natural gas needs specialized facilities, special ships, and reliable routes. For other Gulf states, oil exports finance government budgets, infrastructure, public services, and national development plans. That is why the strait is not just a shipping lane, it is a financial artery, a route where energy becomes money, and money becomes state power. But the effects do not stop in the Gulf. They travel outward, to ordinary people, to prices, to daily life. The Strait of Hormuz may look far away, but oil is priced globally. That means pressure in one waterway can travel into daily life through fuel, transport, and prices. Oil affects more than gasoline. It affects shipping, food transport, airline costs, fertilizers, plastics, manufacturing, government budgets, inflation, market confidence. When energy becomes more expensive, the cost can move through the economy like a chain reaction. A delivery company pays more for fuel. A shipping company pays more to move goods. A farmer pays more for energy-related inputs. An airline pays more for jet fuel. A factory pays more for transportation and materials. A consumer sees higher prices. This does not happen in one simple straight line, and it does not happen the same way everywhere. But energy is connected to almost everything. That is why governments watch oil routes carefully. A serious disruption could create pressure. But the size of the impact depends on many factors. How long has the problem lasted? How much spare supply exists? How much oil is in storage? Whether other routes can help? How quickly shipping companies adjust? What insurance companies charge? How confident markets feel. So we should not exaggerate. The world does not collapse because one route becomes tense. But the world does pay attention because oil markets are sensitive to risk. And the Strait of Hormuz is one of the places where risk becomes visible. For ordinary people, this means a distant waterway can appear in familiar places: at the fuel station, in shipping costs, in food prices, in airline tickets, in inflation headlines, in government decisions. This is how geography enters daily life. A narrow passage near Iran and Oman becomes part of the price of movement everywhere. Now comes the question: if the Strait of Hormuz is so important, why does the world not simply avoid it? The answer is simple. There are alternatives, but they are limited. Some oil can move through pipelines that bypass the strait. Saudi Arabia has pipeline capacity toward the Red Sea. The United Arab Emirates has infrastructure capable of moving some oil outside the strait. These routes matter. They reduce vulnerability. They give producers options. But they do not erase the problem, because the scale of what moves through Hormuz is enormous. Not every Gulf producer has the same bypass option. Not every barrel can be rerouted easily. Ports have capacity limits. Pipelines have capacity limits. Storage has capacity limits. Ships need schedules. Buyers need supply. Markets need confidence. And infrastructure takes years to build. This is the difference between having an alternative and having a full replacement. A backup door helps, but it does not solve everything if the main door handles most of the traffic. Tankers also have flexibility that pipelines do not. A tanker can change its destination depending on demand, price, and contracts. A pipeline is fixed. It connects one place to another place. That makes pipelines useful but limited. Liquefied natural gas creates another challenge. It requires specialized cooling facilities and specific transport ships. That makes simple rerouting even harder. This is the Strait of Hormuz problem. The world has some ways around it, but not enough to make it irrelevant. Global energy systems are built around existing routes, and once a route becomes central, replacing it is difficult. The problem is not that there are zero alternatives. The problem is that the alternatives are limited compared to the scale of what moves through the strait. This is where the full system becomes clear. The strait is not just geography. It is oil, security, markets, and power in one narrow place. Now we can see the system behind the Strait of Hormuz. The first layer is geography. A narrow passage between Iran and Oman connects the Persian Gulf to global shipping routes. The second layer is energy. Oil and gas exports from the Gulf need reliable routes to reach world markets. The third layer is security. Regional states, the United States, and other powers watch the strait because instability there can affect the global economy. The fourth layer is markets. Oil prices do not only react to supply, they also react to risk, uncertainty, insurance, shipping, and confidence. The fifth layer is leverage. A country sitting beside a route everyone else needs gains strategic importance. That is the real lesson of Hormuz. Power is not always about owning the most land. It is not always about having the largest economy. It is not always about having the biggest military. Sometimes, power comes from sitting beside the route everyone else needs. The Strait of Hormuz illustrates how geography can be influential. It shows how a local waterway becomes a global concern. It shows how oil turns maps into strategy. It shows how markets can react to events thousands of kilometers away. And it shows why the Middle East remains central to global power, not only because of what is underground, but because of how that energy moves. Oil in the ground is potential. Oil on a tanker is in motion. Oil through the strait is connected, and connection is power. That is why this waterway matters, not because it is large, but because the surrounding system is large. So why does the Strait of Hormuz control global oil? Not because it owns the oil, not because it produces all the oil, and not because it controls the entire ocean. It matters because it controls the route through which much of the oil must pass. It is a narrow passage with global consequences, a place where geography, energy, military strategy, and markets meet. Iran matters there because it sits beside the route. America watches it because global trade and allies depend on stability. Gulf states depend on it because it connects their exports to the world. And ordinary people feel it because oil prices travel through the global economy. That is the system, a narrow strait, a global market, a region full of pressure, and a world that cannot easily look away. If you want to understand power, do not only follow the news, Study the systems behind the news. Subscribe to Systems Explained.